So thank you for coming. We've done a session on economics. We're going to do a bit on business now. You'll know. So a lot of you'll know the answers to everything now. Yeah. Just to kind of reintroduce myself to some of you. So my name's Andrew Gillespie. I work at Doverbrooks, which is an independent school in Oxford, and I'm vice principal there and academic director. And started life teaching. Started teaching economics, moved into teaching business, and then became head of department, and then moved up to academic director. I also got involved in examining. So I started marking exam papers in 1992, a long time ago, and then did various roles in examining to look at papers and try papers out and write papers and so on. And currently am chief examiner for A-level business, which means oversee the production of papers and to make sure the questions are right and that they work well and that they're marked properly. So that's over 30,000 papers every year. Chair of examiners for GCSE and an international qualification, which means that we maintain standards over the years. What else am I? Wrote A-level specifications and syllabuses for economics and business to develop the subjects for the future. And I've written 25, 30 textbooks, something like that, GCSE, A-level, undergraduate. So a lot of experience of teaching and the world of examining. And today, what we're just going to try and do is, we won't be able to cover GCSE business in the time we've got. So I'm happy to talk about particular topics if you want, but I just want to kind of focus quite a bit on how we approach the exams and how we are focused on using knowledge and things effectively. So you are going to know a lot of the answers because we said the same thing in economics, which is how do you perform at your best in an exam, which requires certain kind of an approach and a certain kind of mindset, and that's what we're going to be thinking about, is that mindset. If you imagine the life of an exam paper, so you walk in to take your exam, that paper, we will have started working on that probably 2 years in advance, 2 years before, maybe 1 year, but certainly often 2 years. And somebody will have started to write it. It will go to a committee. They'll have to think about it again. They'll rewrite it. Someone else will try out the questions. Someone will mark the questions that have been written. Someone else will then look at how that performs. And eventually it gets approved and then you can sit it. So that's a long process. And what it means is every word on that paper has been thought about. And very occasionally there are mistakes, but it is very, very occasional. If you think of the millions of exams that are sat every year, very, very few mistakes. And so there is a point to everything on that paper. And one of the messages that we were saying earlier, and it's true in business, is why is it there? Why have they given me that information? Why have they drawn that chart? And kind of not thinking enough about the paper and what's in front of you is often a mistake that students make. When I set a question on, I don't know, what year are you? You're not? No, yeah. Year 11. Year 9? Year 11. Okay, 2 year 11s, year 9. Okay. So what have you been studying business this week? What have you been studying? Sorry? Economies of scale. Okay. So it's very easy to get a question on economies of scale, and your brain goes to, what did I do this week? And if you've got a really good brain, you remember your notes. Your really good brain might remember the textbook, and you go, right, and pick it up and put it on the exam paper. And then you find later that you got 2 out of 6 or something. And you think, how does that happen? I can remember my lesson on economy of scale. I can remember my notes. I can remember my textbook. And the question was, tell me how important economies of scale are to Krutoo. And what you've done is you've told me about economies of scale. You haven't told me at all about Krutoo. And therefore, you're only going to get 2 out of 6. So we're not trying to, there are some questions that are literally remember, lesson, notes. Most questions, particularly in business, are not that. They are remember, think about the question, put the two together, answer that question. And maybe it's because we're nervous, maybe it's because we spent too long just with books and we're practicing and practicing book type questions or questions that are just about topics, and we practice them, and then we get into the exam and we just repeat that. In business, I don't think, in my view, you should be doing lots of questions that are about topics, because that isn't what you're asked. You're asked about Krutoo, or you're asked about Tesla, or you're asked about... You've got to think about the business that you are studying, take the knowledge and do something with it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Can you think of... Can you remember what economies of scale are? It doesn't matter if you can't, but can you remember anything about them? I don't know, you could tell me anything about them, I don't know, whatever you want to do. So you've been doing break even. Okay, so can you tell me, others might not, can you remember what break even is?
Same time.
Yeah, so you are breaking even, as in, it's how much do you need to sell in order for your revenue to cover your costs. And if I sell more than that, I start to make a profit. If I sell less than that, I'm making a loss. So break even is understanding, how many students do you need in your school in order to start covering your costs? How many people do you need on your plane to cover your costs? And if I get more than that, I start making a profit. Okay? And so it is thinking about, so I understand the concept, but what are they going to ask me? They're probably going to ask me the importance of break even to an entrepreneur, or the importance of break even to an airline, or et cetera, et cetera. And so what I'm trying to do is practice, how do I use that information or knowledge in a particular situation? Yeah. So simply, break even in the world of airlines. What do you think that means to an airline? Break? I've just said it already, but what do you think an airline is thinking about? You said break even to people who run airlines. What are they trying to measure, do you think? If I was trying to say, is this flight going to break even, I'd need to know about how many people, how many passengers. So that the language I'd be using is how many passengers. If I was a hotel thinking about break even, I'd be thinking about how many guests. If I'm a restaurant and I'm trying to work out whether I'm going to break even, I'm thinking about how many customers. So my language changes because I'm applying what I do to the situation. So let's practice break even or economies of scale or whatever, and put in a few words: small business, big business, growing business, shrinking business. Because that's what I've got to do, is take that and do something new with it. And as I say, if this paper has been written and we're writing a paper about Krutoo and we've explained Krutoo, we've spent 2 years writing about this, and to put those words together, we really, really want you to use them. And if you don't use them, you're writing a textbook answer. So part of business is, I think, is a tough subject. I think in terms of, anybody can sit in a business lesson and probably understand most of the language. Break even, economies of scale is fairly technical, but most people could sit in a marketing lesson and they'll get the idea. So it's not that the concepts are particularly difficult, but the really difficult thing about business is using that information in a unique context that you probably haven't seen before. And that requires a really flexible brain, I think. So if I see a student who's done really well at business, I'm thinking they are clever, because what they've done is they've learnt the textbook, they've learnt the information, and then they've done it something quite clever by applying it to a situation. And business is about, there aren't answers in business. There are no fixed answers, because it always depends on the situation. I think I've got a slide on this later, but let's just think about it now. Have you studied motivation? Have you done anything on motivation? Yeah, you have. Yeah, have you studied motivation? No, okay. Can you remember anything about motivation? Year 10. Okay, it's all right. A while ago, but yeah. Any? Wow. Okay, that's very cool. That's very cool. Can you remember that? Doesn't matter if you can't. Doesn't matter. Okay, self-actualization. Yeah, go on. Any other bits? Yeah, this is a theory which is all about the needs of people. And it basically is saying there are different levels. People have different levels of need. And therefore, kind of what's going to motivate somebody depends where they are on this hierarchy. Yeah? Do you remember any of the others at all? No? Okay, anybody else? Can you tell me? Yeah. Esteem. There's different names according to which book and stuff you use, but yeah. Love and belonging, yeah, okay, or also some people call it social, yeah. What else we got? Two more. Okay, we've got kind of basic needs or physiological. We've got safety needs. So there's different levels of need, and you know, if basically, I don't know, if I've just left school and I've gone out and I'm trying to get my first flat, what I'm really interested in is, can I earn enough money to pay for my apartment? Because I haven't got any savings, and I just need. I'm kind of down here with these lower level needs. I just need money to kind of acquire things, to feel safe in life, and to have enough things to buy and to live and to eat and to drink and all that sort of stuff. If I've been successful in my career, I've got a very good salary, I've got a house, I've got a car, I go on holiday every year, I'm quite secure in what I earn and my wealth and so on, I'm likely to be higher up here. And now what I'm interested in maybe is, do I kind of get enough respect? Do people play to my ego? Or here, this one is, am I doing interesting stuff that feels fulfilling? I'm not going to be motivated. If someone offers me another $10 an hour, I've already got loads of money. I'm not down here, I'm up here now. So what I'm much more interested in up here is this challenging? Is it fulfilling this role? Okay? The point of this, thanks a lot, the point of this is just that people might be at different stages in life. And therefore, what might motivate you in one situation might not motivate somebody else. Does that make sense? If I'm talking to someone who's already highly successful in business, highly accomplished, lots of wealth, well, to motivate them, I've probably got to provide something that's quite interesting. And that's called self-actualization, something that's fulfilling and different and challenging. Whereas somebody else at a lower level, maybe a stable job, maybe having a job, that could be motivating. Having a regular income could be motivating. So you're going to match different rewards to different needs. That's what that idea is about. But the main point is, there's no single answer. You can't say this is what motivates somebody, because it depends. And it depends on the person and their stage in life and what they've achieved and what they're hoping to achieve, etc., etc. I cannot say what motivates you, because I don't know you. So I don't know where you are on this hierarchy, and I also just don't know what it is that drives you. And it might be you're a golf fanatic, and I offer you the chance to play in some golf competition, and you jump out of your chair. But I don't like golf, so that would do nothing for me. And I don't know, is there anything you really like? Basketball. So it might be the chance to go to America or anywhere, I don't know, watch the World Basketball Championships. You'd go, I'd do anything for that. But you might not, and you might not, and I might not. And so the point I'm trying to make is, you can't learn answers in business. You can learn this, but the exam is going to say, okay, that's fine, you know that. I'm assuming you know that. Here's a situation. Which of that is relevant for that person or that business? I'm going to describe this person now, and what you need to do is pick which bit is most relevant. And if you just tell me this, you've learned a theory. But business says, yeah, but which bit, for this person here, which bit really works? And that's what makes it a very difficult subject, because the starting point is this, but actually what you've got to do is relate it to that and not use all of this. So if I ask a question on Maslow, which in one sense you're kind of wary of doing. Because if you ask a question about Maslow, you're probably going to get an awful lot of answers that tell me these. I don't need all of them. I just want to know which bit is relevant to that person that I'm talking about. And you get these huge long answers. If I ask about economies of scale, I don't know how many economies, have you done different types of economy of scale? Okay, well, I might get an answer that's telling me about technical economies and purchasing economies and managerial economies and financial economy, and off we go. And it's page 20 to 35 in the textbook, and I'm just going to write it out for you. And it's a lot of information, but for this business I was talking about, that's the only one that's relevant. So you've got to be really smart for business, I think. You've got to know stuff, and you've got to select stuff that is going to be useful for that question. And therefore, I think it's quite language intensive. If I'm looking at helping prepare students for it's can you pull apart the words in a question? What does you may or may not have studied that, it's fine, but multinational. Do you know what that word means? Does that mean anything? Multinational? No? Doing business in multiple countries. When I see that, if that was in a question, analyse multinational, my brain has to go, right, multinational, what are you thinking of? So I'm talking about different countries. I might be thinking about exchange rates. Probably thinking about it being quite a big business. I might be thinking about moving things around the world. I might be thinking about demand being different in different countries. But my brain has to give me lots of things. I'm going to pick some of them for this question. But that word has been written. It doesn't say small, it says multinational. Because if it says small business, not a lot of resources maybe, quite quick at decision making, quite flexible, maybe lacking experience. What do I think? So I would almost be practicing, if there's a question with that in it, what does your brain tell you? Because that adjective really, really matters. If it's a, big business, questions about a big business, I don't know, what's that mean? Lots of people, slow at decision making maybe, quite difficult to get an answer, has to go through lots of levels, quite powerful maybe, perhaps lots of economies of scale. So I would almost be kind of doing my brainstorming to think about adjectives. What do these words mean? Because there's going to be a topic, but there's going to be a situation you have to relate it to. And matching the two is quite a big skill. So let's have a look at that. We did that with the other group. Let's just do that. So I probably talked about that. I mean, what is success in GCSE? I mean, from what you've studied so far, what do you think? What's the key to success in business from what you've done so far? Study. That's true in all subjects. Have you got any thoughts about what's the key? No? Okay. I've got to study because I've got to know stuff, but I've then got to know what to do with it. And so we're going to look a bit at kind of understanding the exam, understanding the examiner, but I would stress even more than I did in economics, I would stress context. The key to business is whether you're writing about the business in front of you, this is not a textbook subject. You've still got to know your textbook, but this is not a textbook subject, which is the beauty of it, but equally it's what makes it quite challenging. And I mean, there's different views, but the skills that you need for economics are some. There's lots of diagrams and analysis, but you are using more. I know that model in economics. In business, you've got to apply it very much to the situation. So, okay, so you'll have seen this before, so apologies. Whatever the subject, the key is understanding your customer. As business students, you will know what that means, but it means you've got to meet the needs of your customer to be successful. In terms of the exam, your customer is, who's your customer in the, you know the answer. Who's the customer in the exam? The examiners. So you've got to get inside the brain of people like me, but the people who set your exam, because they've sat there and said, this is the question we're going to ask in front of big committees. This is what we're looking for. This is what we expect in an answer. Okay? And you need to understand the style of question they ask, what they require in a response, and then obviously match up to that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what you want to do, it doesn't matter what your teachers want to do, it doesn't matter what you think is right. You may have another idea of life, great. But for this particular exercise, it's what are these examiners looking for? And those are the kind of starting points in life, okay? Specification syllabus, okay? Same thing, different words. Written for anybody. I mean, your teachers tend to use them, but if I was you, I would have them. I would have them with my highlighters, and I'd be working through the syllabus and making sure so economies of scale, okay? Do you need to know internal and external? Do you need to know technical, financial, manager? I don't know, until I see your syllabus. Your syllabus will say what it is you need to know and what it is you don't need to know. So you don't need to overlearn stuff. And we were saying with the group earlier, be careful sometimes. Textbooks, may or may not have been written for your exam board, may have been written for another exam board. They may or may not have been exactly, they're not checked in the same way that exam papers and syllabuses are checked. So they may have a little bit too much on this or a little bit too little on this. If you want to know what it is you have to know, it's the syllabus. And if we write a paper, we are being checked against that syllabus. And if we get it wrong, everybody complains and we probably are not back next year. This bit here, okay, so past papers, I don't know if can you remember what I said about past papers and mark schemes? That doesn't matter if not. Past papers, valuable to learn the style of question, but you won't get those questions, well, you won't. The idea obviously is that the questions are not predictable. So it's not that you're going to get that question or that scenario again. You might get that style of question. So you need to be familiar with what does a 6 mark or a 9 mark look like? What does a 2 mark look like? But the most important thing is not just that, it's that. What is it? How do they mark this? Because I need to know if I'm training hundreds of examiners across the country, I've got to give them instructions on, right, if you see that, 3 marks. If you see that, 5 marks. If you see that, 0. So it's the instructions on what you're looking for that matters. And it's usually not to do with knowledge. It's not to do with, well, you must have that point, that point, that point, that point, that point, that point. If it's a big question, it's usually to do with the skill. How are you using the knowledge? It's not, so we don't say, are you doing CIE? Are you doing CIE? Yeah, okay. I don't think, I don't know, you can tell me. I'd be surprised if CIE are saying, you've got to have 5 arguments or you've got to have 6. Have they got levels of response, mark scheme? Levels of response, yeah? So what they're looking for is whether your skill is jumping and whether you're demonstrating higher level skills. They're not looking for whether you've got more points. So I know more and more about Maslow, big deal. What I'm looking for is, but have you picked something and applied it, and are you now arguing about Maslow? I'm looking for what you do with it. So understanding the trigger for a level is really, really important to us. So when you get that, you've also got that. On the mark scheme, the bit that matters is what do these grids look like, not what's all the possible answers. The possible answers, there are millions of possible answers. And it's not trying to memorize that. It's trying to see what triggers. And then this thing, useful, just to, you can do that, it'll take an hour to just go through the last 4 years worth of examiners' reports. And you'll find that they are pretty much the same, year after year after year. What are the things that people are doing or not doing? And it's just a reminder to yourself, okay, yeah, okay, so we're not doing this or we're not doing that, and we're going to have a look at some of those things in a minute. So I was given wrong information. I thought you were Pearson, but it's the same principle, right? CIE is the same. You will be able to get hold of a document that is a specification, and you will read this. Okay. So, for example, in Pearson, the theories are Hertzberg, Maslow, Taylor. CIE, I don't know. Do you know the ones that CIE? Exactly the same. AQA doesn't have them. So it changes. The topics are pretty similar, but the exact specifics will vary. What does that mean? I can ask you a question about those 3. I can't ask you about room. I can't ask you about, I don't know, McGregor or something. I can only ask you about the ones that are listed there. So yes, if you want to go and learn modern theories of motivation, fine, but no one's going to ask you about them, whereas I can ask you those. Okay? I do need to understand that word productivity because it's listed there. Okay? Whether I need to understand, okay, so here, I need to understand job enrichment, which is the idea of giving you more challenging tasks, but it doesn't look like I need to understand job enlargement, which is adding more tasks on this way. CIE might be different. But that's the point. The point is they won't ask it if it's not there because there'd be a lot of complaints. Highlighter, you work through, I do know it, I don't know it, I do know it, I don't know it. I use the word, remuneration is a really weird word. And it just means it's a form of reward. And the danger is in my lessons, I'm using the word reward. What they're going to ask you in the exam is remuneration. And so therefore, again, you need to be absolutely familiar with that, well, not that one, but CIE terminology, that you're comfortable with the language. And it's a double check. It's double check for you, it's double check for the teachers that we're all comfortable. We've actually worked our way through this. What it doesn't tell you, obviously, is quite how important, that's a lot of work. 3 motivational theories is, there's a lot of stuff to cover there, whereas that one might take 10 minutes. So it doesn't tell you the relative importance, but it does tell you a bit about what you have to know. I've said that already, but I just cannot go on and on and on about it, which is questions will come to me, and all the time I'm going, why have you put that word in? You've asked a question about a coffee shop. What is it you're expecting to see in the answer to do with that? You've asked, you asked a question about a hairdresser or something. If they put a word in, then what's the context? And how do you expect students to use it? So I'm challenging the examiners, what is it you expect to see? And you've got to challenge yourself, if that word has got through, what am I doing that relates to that I can kind of use in some effective way? Context. And this is the same point. So, often we get asked to do talks about, advise students on the best university. What's the answer to that question? What's the best university? What would you say is the best university for a student to go to? Any ideas? Okay. I'd say I have absolutely no idea. No idea at all. What student? What are their interests? What's their ability? What's their track record? What's their aspirations? What's their financial situation? I don't know. I can't answer that question. And there are most business questions, your immediate reaction should be, I have no idea. Until, how could I answer that question? Say? Yeah, I could, I'm not saying I'll get it right. I could probably advise you if we spoke and I learned about you and I got the information and I could say, right, for you, I reckon that's the best one. The answer for you, by the way, could be completely different. So your best university could be X, Y, Z, and yours is something completely different because you're different people. But I could only answer it once I've understood you, your aspirations, your dreams, da, 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 da. Most business questions, when I look at them, I go, I don't know, because I don't know about company X, Y, Z. So until I read about company XYZ, I can't answer it. And that's very brave to say, because sometimes, your teachers will throw you a question and you should be going, let me go and find out about the business first, because I've got to think about it. And so the exam your brain in the exam is going, XYZ. Oh, this question's about Krutoo. Yeah, okay, let me go back, find out about Krutoo, understand, and then I can put it into the answer. But I need to bring that in. If I start writing, thinking I can answer it, I'm probably going to not quite get it right. That's the question we did. Just for example, typical business question, should you increase the price of your products? I don't know. But what would you want to know? I haven't got a clue. But what sort of things might you want to know? Should it put its price up? Second, Or is it the only company in the world allowed to produce this? Am I the only company that has, the vaccine for the next whatever, and nobody else produces it, and I'm going to put, right, maybe I should put the price up, or maybe that would be socially wrong. But I don't know, until I understand. What else might affect whether you put the price up or not? Anything else? Well, what's the demand? How sensitive is demand to price? What am I trying to achieve? What's the impact on sales? What's the impact on my capacity? How will competitors react? Will the government allow me? And there's millions of questions. And so what my brain's doing is, there's a lot of things to think about. Which ones are relevant? Let's go and read about this company. Because the key thing is, it's that. And I haven't told you about company X. If I haven't told you about company X, you can't ask the question. So just sit there and go, I don't know. I'm going to go and find out. Don't start going, well, I learned price is affected by costs, it's affected by demand, it's affected by competition, and I'm just going to write those bullet points down, and I'm going to somehow think I'm going to get loads of marks. Waste of time. So my business, true in economics, even more in business. Read the question, stop. Don't do anything. Go and read the case study or item, now think about answering it. And the more focused you are on that case, the more marks you're going to get, I think. Again, we did a lot on this in the last session, but we'll come on to it here. So I know that I've got to know some stuff. I know that this guy keeps telling me I've got to think about the context. And then the other thing I've got to think about is, what is the trigger word? What is it asking me to do? What's the command word asking me to do? And those are very different questions. And therefore, what I've got to do is very different. Any thoughts on how these things differ? Any idea about those, what those things mean? If we take those two, for example. Which is most, and out of those three, which is going to have the most marks? Which one? Explain. So you think that will have the most marks, more than that and that, yeah? Okay, do you think the same? Analyze will have more than that. Okay, so you will know better than me. Typically on CIE then, what sort of mark, do you have those command words or do you have different command words? Do these words mean something to you or not? They're similar between exam boards, but they're not always exactly the same. Have you seen these words or not seen these words? You've seen explain, yeah? Have you seen analyze? Or examine is normally the same as that. No? No? Doesn't mean anything? Have you seen evaluate, recommend, or discuss, or assess? That one. That one. Yeah? Okay. So, we've probably got a slide in a minute. And we were doing this in economics as well, there are different, what we call AOs, assessment objectives. There are different things that examiners are trying to test. This is low level. I'm not saying it's easy, but this is, I know something. The higher you go, the more demanding the skill. And the most demanding skill is to make a judgment and to kind of weigh things up. So I don't know, so do you know from CIE, what are the kind of marks for these sorts of questions? This might be 2. 4. This is 6 or 8 or something. So it depends. The board I do, we get up to about 25 marks for this. It'll vary from board to board, but it's the same skill. It's just how many marks you give things. This is quite low level. This depends on, again, this is normally things like, explain the meaning of. It's textbook. It's normally, explain an economy of scale. So, okay, that's what it is. So it's normally quite a quick, if it's 2 marks, it's just quite a quick question. You're just repeating. It's more this sort of level. This one is building a chain of argument. So you normally see, when you talk about this, it's usually analyse or examine in most exam boards. And this is talking about chains of reasoning. This to this to this to this. You know, you should be practicing. Your classic is your teacher going, so what, why? And you've got to be able to go, well, look, this leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. And if you're doing that, you're analysing. So if you start using words like therefore, as a result, those sorts of words, those sorts of phrases, those are analytical words. Okay? Let's take a ridiculous example, isn't it? A business puts up its price. What might happen? What might happen to sales? What might happen to its sales? Okay, might go down. So a business puts up its price, therefore sales might fall. As a result, what might happen to the number of employees that it needs? If you end up selling less, what might happen to? They might resign or be made redundant. So we could follow a chain through, which could be, you know, you put your price up, sales fall, you don't need to produce as much, therefore you end up making redundancies, therefore you get a terrible reputation in the community, therefore the local press tell you you're horrible, therefore you regret it and put the price down. You can follow it through. And if you're going boom to boom to boom to boom, well, that is analytical. Okay? And so that's not easy, but that's following a chain of logic. The highest skill, which you have to do a bit of at GCSE and a lot more of at A level, but the highest skill is discussing something, which is, well, that's, you could put the price up, but on the other hand, there's a disadvantage. So overall, I think you should or you shouldn't. It's weighing things up. And you know, same in economics, it's a tough thing to do, is to weigh up things to make a judgment. Or the other thing in business, and if CIE do this, is often, should you do that or should you do that? So your sales are falling. Should you spend more on advertising or should you put the price down? And you've got to weigh up those, you know, yeah, that's one argument, that's another argument. I'm going to make a judgment. Okay? So you've got to get those words. Now in the specification for CIE, I'm sorry I haven't brought it, but you know, it'll set out, it'll say, these are the words we are going to use, and this is what you must do for those words. And it's just matching your time and effort. This really, if this is 2 marks, for most exam boards, that's 2 minutes, right? Very quick. You're not wasting, you know, you don't need, as a result, therefore, consequently, and in the meantime, and yesterday, you don't need all of that. And therefore, knowing stuff to get that out of the way isn't useful. Here, I've got to develop an argument, but I don't need a counter argument. I don't need to go, but, because it's not asking me to discuss, it's just saying analyse. So, analyse whether to, I don't know, work from home. Here are the arguments. I don't have to consider the arguments against. If it asks me to discuss, I'm looking at 2 sides. So now I need words like but and however, or on the other hand, because I'm beginning to do that stuff. So the language and the structure that you can use for your answers must match, and the time you spend. I mean, this one, it's, you know, although it's only 6 marks or 8 marks, whatever it is, it's a big question you're discussing. You need to put a bit of brain power into that. And this stuff you should be just knocking off quickly. So you know, being clear on those command words and what they mean. Okay, so let's take that. These will be Pearson questions, so I apologise for that. But it's the same, it'll be the same kind of approach. Tell me anything about that question. It might be 2 marks in your world, it might be 4 marks on another board, but for Pearson it happens to be 3 marks. But tell me, your brain is looking at that. What do you need to do or not to do? How hard do we need to work on this one? Not too hard. Is this about a small business, big business, Krutoo? Is that question about that? Or is this a textbook question? Right. So despite what I've just told you for the last half an hour, that one has no context. It's not a restaurant that's a sole trader, or it's not a coffee shop that's a sole trader, or it's just a sole. So that one is a textbook. I really should be able to get these out of the way fast, because I don't need to do much thinking here. I've just got to remember what my notes said about sole trader and save my brain for when it says analyse the advantages to somebody. Because that's a more demanding question. I know it's obvious, but what's the point about that? Come on, I know it's obvious, but the number of times we get 3 and we end up going, okay, what's the best one? So to get the one that you can get 3 marks for, you just need to say, right, what are the advantages? Which one can I explain best? That's the one I'm going to pick. And just spend 30 seconds working out the one that you want to pick, rather than regurgitating the 5 that are in your head. Yeah. Can you think of an advantage of being a sole trader? So have you studied sole traders? It's kind of running your own business. Can you think of an advantage? Can you think what would be good about being your own, not working, not being part of a company or being part of a big business, something like that? Don't need to share money with you. Okay. So what's the advantage? Yeah. Okay. So higher rewards because is an explain word. Higher rewards because you don't have to share your profits with shareholders or other investors. Boom. Done. That's fine. Very quick. And we're using a word like because. Now, what have they done here? The advantage of being a sole trader. Now, this is a waste of time. Why is that? I mean, it's okay, but it's a waste. That first bit's a waste of time, because that's what the question is. So you don't have to rewrite the question. So what you don't want to do is not finish this paper. So I could just forget this and just go straight to full control of the business. This means that, good phrase, that the owner can decide what products are going to release and what products are going to be sold. Therefore, decision making is going to be faster. So you've got full control. You make the quick decisions. It's great. Control is explained 3 marks, no problem. If you want to, I was saying to the other group, although you're doing CIE and you do need to be careful about differences between the boards, Pearson mark schemes, Pearson examiner reports are good because they give you commentary on answers, and that's it's quite useful sometimes to see, you know, how people answer questions. Okay, forget that. Okay, tell me about that question. Can you read it? Analyse the likely impact of external factors on business decisions made by TBTS. And I think that was probably, I'm going to guess, 6 marks. What does that mean? What's that about? Analyse the impact of external factors on business decisions made by TBTS. Okay, here's our business. What are external factors? What's going on outside the business? Anything that happens outside the business? Say again? What about let's see, what sort of things in the environment? Yeah, good, exactly right. So what sort of things? So okay, so literally the environment, so the weather. I saw some pretty heavy rains on whenever I arrived Thursday or something. I could imagine that impacted some businesses. Yeah. What else? So any other external factors? So that again, it might be a phrase. The phrase might be slightly different for CIE, but it's basically talking about anything going on around here that affects the business. What else is there out there, outside in the world out there? Weather? What other stuff? If you open the newspaper, look on the news, what sort of things is going on? Say it? Crime? I suppose so. Okay, so these kind of social factors. I can put crime, it's okay if you want, but yeah. Government. So, okay, so I'm going to put political. Political factors, government. Have you had a change in government here recently or something? Is that right? Or, you know, so government factors, new laws, new trade agreements, those are external factors. The state of the economy is an external factor. So I don't know what it's like here, but in the UK, we've got a lot of prices are going up really fast. It's very expensive to borrow money. People's wages are not going up very fast. There's lots of strikes going on. So the economy in the UK is a bit of a mess at the moment. So that's affecting businesses because you know energy costs in the UK are really high because we've got you know the fuel costs are going up. So there's loads of stuff here. Social factors, you've got crime. We could have things like, again, in the UK, we've got an ageing population. So that changes demand for certain things because we've got the population, you know, demands of an older population. I'm sure you've got this going on. Of course, you've got it going on here, but technology is an external factor. Okay. AI is a big news in the UK. AI in schools is big news at the moment. There's a report yesterday that 3 out of 10 pieces of homework submitted are completed by AI at the moment. So schools and universities are trying to work out what does that mean and coursework. How do we deal with coursework in the world of AI? There's lots and lots and lots of change. So my brain, so I don't know whether you've studied this or not yet, but my brain, I could look at that question and go, fantastic, external factors, political, economic, social, technological. I've got 20 pages of this and 30 pages of this and 500 pages on this, and I'm going to write it all. It's only 6 marks, but I don't care because I really love this topic and I'm going to write it all. So the first thing is controlling your emotions, okay? But I've also made one massive mistake. In doing this, I've just made a big mistake in life. What's my mistake? Because what I've done is I've gone to the things that I love. Politics, economics, technological, robotics, automation. It's brilliant, it's really exciting. Let's go and write a load of stuff. And I come out a happy man and then get my grade 2 and cry a lot. What do you need to do for that question? Again? Yeah. We cannot answer that question. None of us can answer that question unless you happen to have seen this paper, because we have no idea what TBTS does. And if we don't know about TBTS, we shouldn't attempt the question. So we stop and we go, I am not going to do this until I have done what? Read the case study. This is in my mind because I know this, but that isn't what they're asking me. They're not saying, please tell me everything you know about the external factors. And we discover, well, let's take that, you know, we discover it is a school. And we go, oh, right, okay, hang on. This is big news. AI in schools is big news, isn't it? That's the one I want to write about. Or, I don't know, blimey, there's nobody of school age because everybody is 90 years old. That's a problem. So, or it's not a problem, whatever. But the point is I can now select the bit I want to talk about. So again, why is business difficult? You've got to have all of this in your head, but you're not writing about it. You're writing about one or that one. And to know which one to pick, you've got to go, that's a really important word. TBTS, until we know that. Which I don't know, so we're not going to answer it. That's the mark scheme. Again, this may not be quite the same for CIE, so I apologise if it isn't, but it's the same principles. The most important thing in that bit of the mark scheme for me is that's the most important. I'm interested in that. Because that's telling me there are 6 marks for this. I don't know if that's true for CIE, but you said it's about 6 marks for an analysis question, feels about right. And it's telling me 3 plus 3, 6 marks, that's okay. What's it telling me about those 6 marks? It's telling me 3 of them are for this thing called AO2, and 3 of them are for this thing called AO3. Now, certainly in Pearson, I'm sure CIE will be similar. AO1 is knowledge. AO2 is basically context. AO3 is analysis. Do you have AO4 as well? Is it part of AO3?
The evaluation.
Yeah. And is that a separate? Some boards put it together here, and some put it for GCSE put it separate. So if you've got AO4, then it's evaluation, or sometimes it's combined. I mean, you'll have to look for CIE quite where it lives, but it's around there. Okay, that's telling me there are 6 marks. 3 are for AO2 and 3 are for AO3. So therefore, how many marks are there for AO1? Okay, there are 6 marks altogether. There are 3 marks for AO2. There are 3 marks for AO3. How many marks for AO1? 0 is the right answer. Okay. So knowledge, for Pearson, check for CIE, knowledge would get you 0. All the stuff we just did, political, economic, technology, social, all of that, 0 marks. We could write 20 pages on the political system in Thailand compared to the UK, the economic crisis of the UK. We could write 20 pages and we would get 0. Even though we know a lot, that isn't what they were asking us to do. They were asking us to analyse the impact of external factors on TBTS. And if you don't start writing TBTS, if that isn't how you kind of begin, you're probably going to get 0. So don't go to this for the big questions. Don't start defining things. Here's the external environment, here's business, here's interest rates, here's the economy. Don't do all that. Go to the question and you go straight to the business. And the only way you do that is by going back to the case study. So we're writing about the business, we're analysing, we're not evaluating, we're not doing loads of knowledge, we're just working out the thing we want to talk about and then applying it, and we go and get 6 marks. The mark scheme. Okay, can anybody work out what TBTS does? Toys, okay, right. So let's go back to this sort of stuff. Toys, age, social fact. I mean, there'll probably be a clue in the case study, but, are the children or not children? Technology, revolutionising the world of toys. So I'm going to pick something that works for toys, okay? Probably need one thing, I'm going to develop it, okay? You are probably not going to get a case study again on toys. So spending too long on reading this is probably a waste of time. I want to remember that. Okay, it's about social factors, okay. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because it's not of use to me. I'm not going to get a toy business again. So that bit isn't useful. Understanding that bit is useful. And understanding that is useful. Because that, again, it's a Pearson one, but do the same for CIE. That's how they mark 6-mark questions. Whether it's toys or chickens or schools or fashion shops, that's how they mark 6-mark questions. So I really, really, really want to understand this. Because if I want to get 6 marks, what have I got to do to get 6 marks on any analysis question? What does that tell me I've got to do? If I want to get 6 marks, I've got to do AO2, I've got to do AO3, I'm going to do AO1. I've got to have detailed application. It really is about toys. And I've got to have logical chains of reasoning, and that's analysis. So I am working with my teachers and myself to practice chains of reasoning and to apply it. And the only way you can apply it is if someone gives you a stimulus that's got business in it. Don't practice all these questions. Analyze the effect of, economies of scale. There's no business in it. You can't do it. So analyze, effective economies of scale on X, Y, Z. That's useful, but you've got to have a context. So that is how, we train examiners and say, whatever the 6-mark question is, that's how you're marking it. If it's an analysis, you do it like that. So that's what they've got to understand. That's what you've got to understand. That is much more important than that. This is just a load of things that students might say. This indicative content is, well, this is the sort of thing they might argue. It's not the answer. You haven't got to have all of them. You haven't got to say exactly that. You haven't got it. You can have something that isn't there. So there's no point. Mark schemes are important, but not for the reasons that people often think. It's that much more interesting. We won't read that, but this is this is an example of. Okay, so what's okay? Can you read that? Is that too small? Too small? Too small. Okay. I'm just going to read out the first sentence. External factors such as demand is likely to impact TBTS decisions, as depending on how high customer demand is, they will need to make the effective decision of how many children's play items to produce. If nothing else, they are in their first sentence talking about play items. They seem to be thinking about toys. So I'm encouraged that this student is going to be thinking about toys. And they will, then they start talking here about other things to do with toys. So that's what you should be doing. Your first sentence should show that you're doing exactly what they asked you to do. How about that one? Big question, little question. Can you read that again? Explain one benefit to a business of having a flat organisational structure. Very similar to what we talked about before. So what would you say? What's your brain saying here? Big question, little question? Little. Explain. Little question. Context or no context? No context. Textbook. This is textbook. Fast. That I should know. Fast. Does anyone happen to know what a flat organisational structure is? Doesn't matter. You might not have studied it. You might have forgotten it. Does anyone happen to know? Not many? Yeah, not many levels. So if your business is, here's the chief executive, and basically this is everybody who works in the business and that's it. There's no middle management and there's no hierarchy. You've got a very flat, very wide, flat structure compared to here's a business and here these two people work for them and they work for them and they work for them, and that's beginning to be this very hierarchical structure. And more businesses tend to be that. So we've got to know what it is. We've got to get this out of the way quickly, and we've got to explain one benefit, not five. So we've just got to think, okay, what do I know? What's the one I want to pick? Any ideas what might be good about not having this, but having a flat structure? Any? Second? Faster to change. Fast decisions, yeah, okay, good. I hope you're going to take the exam this summer. Yeah, fast decisions. I don't know what to do. Ask the chief executive, get an answer, boom. Fast decision making because, explain, we like the word because. Fast decision making because you can quickly ask the boss, get an answer and do something. If I needed to get a few more marks, whereas in this system there's lots of levels of hierarchy. That's it, quick, go. Brilliant. Don't care what that says. AO13. What's that telling me? How many marks for AO2? None, because there's no company name, there's no type of business. AO3, none, there's no analysis. This is just, do I know something? So it's the basis, but my problem, not my problem, is, I keep saying the same thing, I apologise, but if you spend all of your time doing these revision cards, flat structure, economies of scale, Maslow, and all I'm doing is doing that, and I'll get these marks, but I won't get the 6 markers and the 9 markers, which are all about context. So just be careful how time is managed. Okay, what's that one? That's fine. I don't need that. 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 Okay, so let's again, we probably might not have exactly the same, but just to kind of in terms of style of question. So this is TBTS wants to sell a wider variety of toys. It's planning to buy these from other suppliers. It will need finance. Classic business question. Where do you get your money from? Option 1, use the profits of the business. Option 2, go and get a loan. Justify which one you should choose. That is a classic business question. Do I go and get a loan or do I use the profits of the business? So what are you doing there? What's your brain telling you there about that style of question? Is it a textbook question or is it a context question? Yeah. And what is the context? The context is TBTS. So my first thing is to write that. If I'm making notes or I'm planning this, I write that first, not... Because what do we know about loans? Do you know anything about loans? Do you know anything about loans? If I go and get a loan, I'm going to borrow money. Could be expensive. I've got to pay interest rate on it. Could be risky because I've got to repay it. So I know stuff about loans. If you've studied it, you'll know stuff about loans. But that's what I'm just trying to work out. Yeah, but I want to know about this business and loans here. So the question really is, should they use profits or should they get a loan? But it's about them. Okay, what would I want to know? If you're going to get a loan, you basically go to a bank and you borrow some money. What would you want to know? What would you want to know? Yeah, you'd want to, again, I don't know if you've studied this or not, but you might want to know what the interest rate was. How much would they charge you for that? So I'm going to go and look at this case study and see, do they tell me anything about interest rates? I might want to know how much I've borrowed already. So have I already got a lot of debt or not? Or would this be the first time I've borrowed money? Because if I've got lots of debt already, this could be quite risky. So I might be going back to the story to see, have they borrowed money or not? Or what's going on there? Profits, should I use my profits or not? What would you want to know? Say again?
Margins.
Yeah, what margins they got, and what profit have they got? Have they got any profit? Have they got lots of? Are they sitting there with billions and they're just looking at it saying that's lovely, and they could use that easily? Well, they haven't got any profit at all anyway, so they've got to do that. We don't know. We will investigate these things to make the decision. So let's have a think about that question. I've probably got to have some knowledge of what these things are. I suspect they either give me 0 marks for that or very few. We'll see in a second. But probably this isn't what this question is about. Is there any AO2? Is there any context in this question? It's about this TBTS. Definitely got that. AO3. Yeah, I'm going to have to analyse this. I'm going to have to analyse this. So I'd expect a few as a result, therefore, consequently. I'm going to have to analyse this and this. So I'm going to have a paragraph on that and a paragraph on that. If I only do one of them, I won't have answered that question. And then lastly, I'm going to make a recommendation or a decision about whether that one is better than that one. Imagine we discover that they have 20 billion, trillion, zillion baht sitting there on the table. What would you suggest they did? Right. Imagine we discover they can borrow money at 0% interest rate and never ever have to repay it. We'd probably do that one. So once we discover the situation, we can make an answer and we can recommend which one to do, and suddenly this is an easy question. But what we don't do is start writing our notes on profit versus loans, because you've probably learned in a lesson what that is, and you've learned in a lesson what that is. You have not learned in a lesson about TBTS. That's the challenge of the subject, and that's why the subject is brilliant. So let's have a look here just at some of the things. Okay, without reading it, and I'm not saying therefore it is good or not good, but in terms of writing technique, that does begin to fill you with some confidence without reading it. It doesn't mean it's great or not, but what's good about that final paragraph? It looks like if they know they're going to make a conclusion, I suspect then it's going to work here. And actually, on a quick glance, I mean, obviously you've got to read it, but on a quick glance, if they choose to use retained profits, if they choose to get a loan, so they're definitely doing that, and they're definitely doing that. I don't know how well they're doing it yet, but they are doing that. And then they're saying, in conclusion. So just kind of mentally, that's making me think they've got a structure to this answer. The only thing I'd probably recommend, obviously, is I'd probably do that as one paragraph, leave a line, and then start that. Because then you really are flagging, Profit, gap. Loan, gap, conclusion. And you're really saying, look, I know how to address this question. Okay. Okay, we are now trained examiners. Tell me about why that's important. And then you've got to go and check it for CIE. But anyway, tell me why that's interesting. What does that tell me?
3 marks for the
3 marks for context. Yeah, keep going. Got some more marks to have, haven't we?
3 marks for analysis,
3 marks for analysis.
3 for evaluation.
3 for evaluation. What are the no marks for on this one? Knowledge. So again, telling me what a loan is at great length, waste of time. And usually here, I'm not a big, people have different views. I'm not a big fan of defining everything at the beginning. In this question here, it would get you no marks anyway, but also you should be able to show what a loan is when you start writing about it. You don't have to define everything as long as you show the understanding within it. But yeah, okay. This thing, why am I not, I mean, it's nice, but why am I not very excited about reading this? It's all right, but I don't really need to read this. Why am I not very bothered about reading this? I might learn something, but it's all about TBTS. I'm not going to get asked about TBTS ever again. So quick read, but I am very interested in this because I want to learn how they mark 9 markers, and that will tell me. And that's what I would go through with my teachers. What's level 3? What's the difference between that and that? And when you get your, you know, if you get stuff marked and it's a levels approach, you should be much more, it sounds silly, but it doesn't kind of matter whether it's 5 or 6 or 4. What that means is it's level 2. What you're interested in is, why isn't it, I'm much more interested in, if it was me, I'm much more interested in, at the end of my answer, has my teacher put that? Which one of those have they put? Arguing over whether it's 5 or 6 or whatever, you know. Why is it that level, not that level? What do I need to do that? That's really interesting. Because that's what examiners, you know, there's a trigger somewhere that makes an examiner go, oh, it's there, not there. And, you know, in any subject, marking is you get 2 examiners, and you know, a difference of a mark in any subject for any exam board is sometimes very difficult to know. Is it 5, 6? You know, so it's more significant is whether the level is right, and for you to understand. You know, if I got 2 or 3, that's telling me that something I'm doing is at the lowest level, and there must be something in the style of my answer. So, for example, if I only did that and ignored this completely, I wouldn't be level 3, I expect to be level 2. So I need to understand I must talk about both of them. If I didn't talk about TBTS and just talked about this and this, I'd probably end up at level 1. And I might have written 25 brilliant pages, but I'm still level 1 because it's not doing that. So the question, the dialogue with the teacher is about levels, where you're landing, well, to begin with, which level, and then after that you can worry about within a level. Might do all of them.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Could you go back to the example answer of the last question?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one. So just want to ask for the evaluation part in the conclusion paragraph.
Yeah.
So if you wrote all the advantages of the retained growth and disadvantages of backload, you say, right? So in conclusion, how do we avoid repeating our any advantages of the
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's an age-old business question. So, and it's difficult, is the answer. It's difficult to. So a typical business question is, you know, should you do A or B? Okay. Different boards will have different guidance. So you will know better than me about CIE. Some boards say, you know, A, for and against, B, for and against, conclusion. And that might be the CIE approach. That's, if you think about it, that is a hell of a lot of work You're taking something, you're doing for and against, you're taking something else, you're doing for and against, and then you've got an overall conclusion. There's a lot of brain power going on there. Some other boards would be much more A, yeah, I can see why A is good, I can see why B is good, but I'll tell you about A versus B. That's an easier one to make your judgment, because you're just weighing up one versus the other. Are you saying CIE prefer that approach? Yeah, okay. So again, that's learning the structure. I mean, that's where the mark schemes will tell you exactly what they want. Here, what you're trying to, I mean, where this one is quite good actually, it says, look, this one is more, A is good, B is good. In conclusion, TBTS should use a bank loan because retained profit may not be adequate because it's a small business. So now we're going back to the nature of this business saying, yeah, okay, you could use profits still a little, but they probably haven't got very many. So therefore they're going to have to use this one. So what they're doing is telling me why A or B is better than the other one. Does that make sense? And that's okay here. And they're using they've come back to the context and saying, in this situation, given that it's a small business, it probably doesn't have profits, and therefore it's forced to do the other one. So that works well with that. With this one, it is more difficult because you've sort of you've looked at pretty much everything anyway. I suppose you've just got to work out what makes one force stronger or weaker than the other. So you've kind of gone for, against. Of those, which argument is really, really compelling? So in conclusion, given that is such an amazing thing to do, that wins over that one. Or given that this is a huge disadvantage here, you've got to weigh up, evaluation is weighing up the relative importance of these forces. And evaluation, to me, is usually linked back to context. You can make a judgment, as that one is doing. The judgment is because you've understood that. Ultimately, Edinburgh is a brilliant university, Oxford is a brilliant university, they're both brilliant universities. Because I know you and that you love Scotland, go to Edinburgh. Once I know you well, my judgment is easier. And so again, it comes back to what is it about TBTS or whatever that enables you to give an answer. Otherwise, you are just saying, overall, then, you could do it, but you couldn't do it. And that's kind of not very powerful. Because
in that context, no?
Yeah, because in this context, the sun is shining and therefore this is going to happen. Or in this, bring context in here if you can to come out to this is all about relative importance of one compared to the other. And you're making a judgment about something being bigger than, more significant than, more important, more pressing than. You're weighing up. You really want evaluative language here: bigger than, greater than, more powerful than. But you've got to say because, and the because is linked to the context. Does that vaguely sort of help? I say this stuff's quite difficult to unpick. Okay, we're probably done because I'm probably just telling you the same stuff now. Paper summary. Yeah, okay, that's related. So that's related to Pearson again. So probably the main point being, all I've done is I've taken that from the examiner reports. So go and read them again and just get their insight into these things. Main messages, documents we need, specification, check the AOs, make sure they're what I've told you, but I think they are. Command words, what are the words they use at the beginning of a question? Are we understanding them? Always context. Don't start writing, think before you start writing. Get hold of the examiner reports, get hold of mark schemes, but look at the grids. Have those grids on your wall more than the indicative, what we call the indicative content. Work hard, but the point about this is work smartly in the exam. Okay, is that all right for now? Is that okay? Are we ready to win? Good. Thank you for your time. Thanks. We're done. Have you got any questions? Anyone got any questions? Or are you happy? You know it all now. You can run this session next time. Go Good. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.